Well, it's an honor to be welcomed by Prairie Lights tonight. I'm Hani El-Qadi, and I spent a few years teaching at the University of Iowa and a couple of decades in the school system. I write for the Press Citizen, and I produce a program on local TV called Education Exchange for the last 27 years. Of course, we are on cable local, so many of you have never seen that before. And I thought maybe I was the only physician or surgeon who left the glamorous career of medicine to the writing area. And go to a town where Larry Baker is shining. He's with us tonight. And write in a place where writers, or most of the famous writers, are born. Until I met Dr. Viraj Thakur. And Viraj Thakur was a physician who decided at one time throughout the whole journey to move to economy and social science, and became an internationally known author in the area of globalization. And I thought we have a lot in common to talk about. And through him, I knew the family, the Nepalese family, a very distinguished one. And I was introduced to his aunt writings as well, Dr. Thakur.
Thank you, Dr. Hani El-Qadi, for that very complimentary introduction. I would like to begin by thanking all of you this evening for taking the time. It's a very warm Iowa evening. I appreciate you being here. And we will start our show by, I would also like to mention that we have in the audience, especially because Iowa City is a UNESCO recognized city of literature, we have a family that has closely been associated with the United Nations. So Pramila Dougal also happens to be my aunt, and my uncle Ramesh Dougal served in the United Nations for almost 36 years. So I think it's quite appropriate that the UNESCO City of Literature meets a United Nations author. I would also like to acknowledge Dr. Hani El-Qadi and his efforts at putting this together. And I open the floor now to Lindsay Park to introduce the author further. Thank you.
Good evening. Welcome to Live from Prairie Lights. Tonight, Pramila Dougal will read from and talk about her book, Shadows of Wealth. Pramila Dougal is originally from Kathmandu, Nepal, and was educated in Darjeeling, India. She obtained her Cambridge University Overseas Certificate after 12 years of schooling and graduated with a bachelor degree from Padma Kanya College in Kathmandu, Nepal. She has lived in numerous places around the world with her husband, a UN diplomat. She has taught at the National Child Research Center in Washington, D.C., and started the first kindergarten private school in Kathmandu. She has taught at the United Nations School in Manhattan, a private school in Westchester, and the International School in Beijing. She is the author of Family Secrets, 2-in-1, Shadows of Wealth, and the Nepali Cookbook. She currently lives in California. We're very happy to have her here tonight. Please welcome Pramila Dougal.
I'm a shorty, it has to be my height. Can you hear me? Okay. Good evening, everybody. As you know, my name is Pramila Dougal, and I've kind of somewhat become an author. It was my passion, even as a child, to have a book with my name. I thought it would be great if I could just have a book with my name. From third grade, I started writing, and I progressed from there on. I went to a British school. I did my senior Cambridge. And after I finished my senior Cambridge, I did college in Kathmandu, Nepal. But the idea of having a book was so distant for me. Got married, had children. Where was the book? The book never came. But I was determined to get myself a book. Eventually, we finished. My husband was a diplomat. We've lived all over the world. We've lived in Vienna. We've lived in China. We've lived in New York 17 years. I've taught in various schools. I taught at the United Nations School in New York. I taught at the International School in Vienna. With all of that, once he retired, we moved to California. That's where we have our two sons. And of course, in California, life's a beach. But you know, life was not a beach for me because I'm a very hyper person. I have to be doing things. So eventually I decided I'm going back to my own practice of having taught all those years. I started teaching in a private school in Long Beach. I was there for 9 years. My mother passed away. And I thought to myself, you know what, we're all going in that direction. I just couldn't accept my mother's death. And before I left, I need to do something because that was my dream. All I wanted was a book with my name. I wasn't asking for anything more. So I quit. I gave up my job. I went to UCLA. I took classes. I finished there, and I also took corresponding classes from an organization in Connecticut. And I thought I had myself all made. But I had everything in my head, but how do I go about doing it? So I sat down, and a voice kept telling me, if you want the book, you better start working at it. Who knows what's going to happen tomorrow? So my first book was Family Secrets. Okay, I finished Family Secrets, and then again, you know, an idea came to my mind, and my second book turned out to be 2-in-1. And I thought I was done. Then I got another idea. You're not done yet. Wait, I wanted to do my biography. I waited. And then my third book, Shadows of Wealth. So all those books put away, eventually I have written my autobiography. It will come out. But everything began when I was in third grade. I always wanted to be an author, and all I wanted was one book. That's all. I didn't want anything more. But as life went on, with all of the obligations, I started the first nursery kindergarten in Nepal. I've done a lot of things around, but I did nothing for my book. So once I quit my job, I started writing. And this is how these books have come about. Now, I wouldn't tell you about the other, it's all fiction. I couldn't tell you about the other books because I don't have that much of time. But I will talk about Shadows of Wealth. So if you're wealthy, watch out, they're shadows. This is a family that was very wealthy. But you know, when you're wealthy, you do have problems, don't you? If you're wealthy, you'd know. Well, this book is about wealth. And you might ask, what is the snake doing here? That's temptation. It's about a family that was very rich. They had a son and a daughter. I won't tell you everything, but they had trouble with the son because he was a narcissist. Even in childhood it showed. There was no way that they could restrain their son. Whereas the mother and father, as rich as they were very pious people. They gave to charity, but the son was very different. And as he grew older, it became worse and worse. I'm going to read you a few pages from this. I'm not all that young, I have to put on my glasses. Blatantly, Bobby answered, the social nucleus is such, they are always opinionated, be it good or bad. About others, they say things to suit themselves. That's the son. And what does the father say? Young man, you will always live in an opinionated society. Therefore, a responsible person, aware of his freedom, would calibrate the attractions that could mislead him. You have acted egoistically, expecting society to conform to your dictates. In short, you are a rogue without a conscience or compassion, said his father. So that's where the son was. Well, it wasn't working. They did everything for the son, it just didn't work. Then what happens is the son is on his own. as rich and as famous as the parents were, it didn't work. There was no control over the son. So, standing tall over his son, Anish, that's the father, since you are unwilling to change your disdainful habits, believing that as an adult you are privileged to live your life the way you wish, I am giving you an ultimatum. I demand an answer in 3 days. With eyes fixated on the floor, Bobby, the son, remained silent. I couldn't give you all because you wouldn't buy my book then, right? Okay, 37. Now the mother is very religious and she prays all the time. She believes in the family, but then, again, your mother and I suggest that when you return to India, you marry a woman of your class, refrain from flirtation and sexual activities with foreign women. Beware, you could be trapped and forced into litigation. How will you defend yourself? Your goal is to return a dignified man, qualified to become executive head of my business. Should these conditions be ignored, I will disinherit you, said his father. Okay, with all of that happens, he does he does come to the States, he does study, he does everything to please his parents, but the narcissism in him still remains. He's egoistic, he knows that he comes from a well-to-do family, and he keeps pushing that personality on and on. There comes a time when he does realize that something has to be done because now the father has sent him to better his ways. But you know, old habits die hard, and especially if you're a child of a wealthy family, you figure everything is made for you. It's all going to work out. But we're all but human. We err. But he didn't look at his mistakes, so he keeps moving on. Eventually, he does come back. I can't tell you too much, because if I tell you too much, you wouldn't be interested in the book. But what happens is, this person is so narcissistic, he pretends that he mixes into the groups that he meets with. But within the group, he is scheming. What else can I do? And his schemes work out very, very well. But eventually, at the end of it, it all comes home to roost. Then he realizes, how far can I stretch this? Where can I go? He finds no outlet, and then he takes very drastic action. I can't tell you what he does, then you won't buy my book and you won't read it, so I'll take you up to there. You have to find out for yourself. That was the book that I'm talking about, The Shadows of Wealth. I have 2 other books. Family Secrets. I'm sure we all have family secrets, don't we? Is there anybody here who doesn't have a family secret? I don't. A simple family, but here I had to make up secrets for everybody's family. So here there are 3 stories. They're not related to each other. One is of the family. I went to school in Darjeeling, and this was a Catholic school where there were Irish nuns. And there were girls from all parts of India, Asia. And there was a group they called themselves Anglo-Indians because the father was Scottish and the mother was local, Lapchas, a mixture of Nepali and Tibetan. And these children brought in fantastic stories, you'd never believe it. So we as girls, locked up in a convent, of course we're very eager to hear their stories. They had stories to tell. And this book has 3 stories. One of them is that. The other one is of 2 sisters, very diverse. They go their different ways, but when it comes to crime, they unite. And the third one is during the time of Indira Gandhi, when she was assassinated. During that time, when the Sikhs was sought out and murdered and killed and what have you. This guy was not a Sikh, but he took advantage of the situation and he performed. He left the house, he had his affair, and things happened. So that's Runaway Husband. So that's the book. This is 2 in 1. It's just one simple story. It's transgender. I've always believed in it. There's a reason why it happens. I know many people don't agree, but I do believe in it. And it's about one family in New York and what happens with their child and what they go through and what they discover. It's fascinating. It's real because we hear about all those things these days. So this is my other book. I've just finished my biography. We've traveled all over the world. My husband was with the United Nations for 26 years. We've lived in different places. We've lived in Vienna. We lived in New York. We've lived in China. I've taken my experiences in all of these places and I put them together as fiction. But sometimes fiction can also be real. When my book came out, 2 in 1, on a Sunday, LA Times, we live in Los Angeles, LA Times had one page of a person who had written about her child. And my book, 2 in 1, had just come out. And I thought to myself, boy, this person has stolen my story. I read it over and over again and I couldn't believe it. I said, in 1 week, nobody can steal your story. But she had given me her name and her email address. So that's what I sent to her and I asked what's happening. I said, read my book, 2 in 1. She read it and about a week or 10 days after, she did respond and she said, yours is fiction, mine is real. It happened and we came so close, didn't we? That's 2 in 1. So sometimes fiction can be real. It could be in your head as fiction, but things happen which can also be reality. So when you read fiction and you figure, well, you know what, I like writing fiction because I can build on it. But by the same token, it has to be very close to reality. Because if you go off track, it becomes a fairy tale. So fiction can bring things, non-fiction can bring things together that sound just like fiction. And when I write, I try to stay close to that. My words are not fancy. My stories are very simple. They come very close to reality. I don't know how to write in that way, where you make it fancy. And I don't like to be reading and making it bored. I empower my characters. But some characters are not good on the author. They drift away, they bully you. You can keep talking, and it's like, you keep talking, but you've done nothing to me. And I want to take this character and put her away somewhere, but have nowhere to put her away. And the other character says, give me my chance. So what do? I have to figure all that out. That's the beauty of fiction. When you write non-fiction, you've got to say it as it is. It's a play of words, but you can't change the story. Whereas fiction allows you to do all that. So I write fiction, and I've just finished writing my own autobiography. It hasn't been published yet. It's with my editor. I'm originally from Nepal. My husband was with the United Nations for 25 years. We've lived all over the world, taught in different schools. We've enjoyed our time, and it was my passion, even as a child, to have one book with my name. How great would it be if I could have one book with my name? What can I do to get that one book? But you can't dictate to time. Time takes you on its slow path till it brings you there and says, okay, this is your turn. So I've been teaching in all of these schools, and we moved, after my husband retired, we moved to Los Angeles, and I was teaching at a private school, and my mother passed away. I am my mother's child. I thought to myself, look, I'm going to go in that direction too. I better do something. Where's the book? So instead of waiting to retire, I resigned. I went to UCLA. I took courses. It wasn't enough. Then I took correspondence courses from an institution in Connecticut. I worked on it. It took me 3 years. Okay, I had all the ammunition, had the tools. Now what do I write? Well, let me go back to my childhood. I went to a boarding school run by Irish nuns in Darjeeling. We were taught very well. English was the subject. You either lost it or you gained. So I loved to write. I was very good in writing essays and things. So, okay, I'm going to start writing. Let's write fiction, but let's put in the experiences that I have had, people that I have met. That's the beauty of writing fiction. You can put all these characters in and make them real. And this is what I have done in all of my books. No one person have I taken, but I've mixed characters. I've mixed different incidences, and I've made believe that it just happened. And that's how I have worked on my fiction. And I like fiction because you can't say the moon is falling on you, but you can go very far with fiction, very different to the non-fiction, because that has to be true. So that's how I have progressed. We have 2 sons, they're both eye doctors. We have 2 daughter-in-laws, they're doctors. Well, they think, she's writing fiction, here we're doing real work, we do doctor's work and all of this, but I try to convince them, read this too, because you'll be in a different world. So that's been my passion. I write poems too, and at this age, I just feel that I've done what I wanted to do, and I want to share. It's not the money involved, it's the passion that I have, I want to share with people. I don't need to get any awards. I'm fine where I am, but I want people to enjoy my book. If somebody comes up to me and says, I read your book, I really enjoyed it, that's enough for me. So ladies and gentlemen, any questions that you would like to ask, please. Thank you.
There you go. Perhaps I can start, Pramila. In this family, in the Shadows of Wealth, what do you think about what's the dynamic that makes the next generation have such different values than the older generation? I mean, is that the situation? Is it like a generational?
It's because the younger generation is just too spoiled. The older generation did not get all of the things they wanted. They didn't get the stuff. They didn't get to do what they wanted. They were supporting the family. They were supporting brothers and sisters. But now things have moved along, and there's some people that have been very, very prosperous. And most of this is with families whose children have been very prosperous, and parents believe we've given them everything, so they will go in the right direction. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. Some things are just inborn. Some people are just narcissistic by character. They're proud. They don't have compassion. And they believe that that's the way it is. Who's going to stop us? But when you're poor, you can't afford to do that. You've got to go on your feet, you've got to use your hands, you can have that narcissistic tendency, but being poor, it doesn't take you too far. But if you come from a well-to-do family, and especially if you're very, very rich, you can afford to do all of that.
Is there a countervailing force in the book? Is there another character that balances? Is it Bobby?
Bobby is the guy who's the narcissist, but his parents try very hard. They're very religious people. They're very, very wealthy. They try to reform the child, but it doesn't work. This character doesn't just change. Something has to happen for such a character to change.
Questions, comments from the audience?
I've had the good fortune to read the novel, and I was very surprised by the ending, I have to say.
Oh, don't give it up, please.
It's a very good read. It's when you don't come from that sort of environment, it portrays it in such a way that you totally buy into it, and it's just a compelling story. So I can highly recommend it. But I wanted to ask you,
Go ahead.
did I hear someone say that you had written a book of recipes from Nepal?
I do. I have.
That I'm interested in as well.
Well, had I known, I would have brought one. Just give me a minute. Now you'd imagine this woman is all over the place. What is she doing writing a book? Let me tell you, I hate cooking. I'll begin by saying that I hate cooking. And I've never cooked. I had to start cooking 1995. My husband was with the United Nations for 27 years, and we always had a cook who traveled with us. But after she went, I sent her home, I had to cook and I hated it. So I thought to myself, you know what, if I have to do it, I'm going to do it my way. I'm not going to follow anybody. It's going to be quick, it's going to be sharp, I don't care who says what. If you don't slice the peel a potato, so what? Just wash it and cook it the way it is, okay? Ginger, just mash it up with the skin. What? It's healthy. All the vitamins are all there. And people that had come to our house, they'd say, oh my goodness, this food, and even the food that you don't like, you praise, right? So I took it for granted. These people are just kind of boosting me. That Pramila, please give us a cooking lesson. So I said, okay. We had about 6 people. Only 1 lesson, no more. Then they said, oh, 1 more lesson. 6 became 10. And then they said, what about us? We also want to do it. So I said, you see, on one condition, we go house to house. If you don't let us in your house, then you can be in this group. I did it for a year and a half. And without me knowing, my friends put out the book. And it was all right. They gave me 1 book. And then I have a very good editor who's also an author. She asked for the book. And when I gave it to her, she said, no, you're much more than this book. Let me redo it. So these are all the recipes, Nepali recipes, that we have here. I wasn't going to talk about it because I'm really not into cooking. Any questions? Yeah.
One more question. How do you think that the people can support the United Nations beyond joining the United Nations Association?
Say that again?
How can we as Americans
Uh-huh.
support, what's behind the United Nations? I'm a member of the United Nations Association, but what ideas do you have from having served, your husband having served? What can you give us that way that will help us feel like we know more about what's going on with the UN?
Well, first of all, I understand what you mean because it's very limited. And even it's because of the distance, it's all in New York. And they can't say much because it has to be, they have to follow their agenda. They can't publicize everything. But the way you get to know about the United Nations is you got to buy their books, read about it, because they're really for peace in the world. And especially now with everything going on in the world, I think the UN itself is in turmoil. So the only way you can contribute, if you wish, to the United Nations, they have UNICEF, they have all kinds of organizations where you can contribute. And again, living here, the UN is just in New York. But of course, it's a great organization. I think it has helped to prevent Third World War. It has its problems too. It lacks money. It needs a lot of cooperation from different countries. And there's so many problems. Every day there's a problem to solve. So it's having a tough time, but it has survived.
I'll make this the last question. Can you just summarize for our audience your book in maybe 2 sentences?
This book?
Yeah.
Which one?
Shadows of Wealth.
Well, all I can tell you is a must-read book. It tells you all the money you have in the world doesn't get you where you want to go. That money becomes for you a burden if you don't know how to use it. That money has to be incorporated into family values. You have to raise your children such that they stay as a family unit. And it's not the money that you have. There are other reasons why you stay as a unit. You've got to be a good person, of good character, giving, helping. There's so many other avenues. That money should be utilized for that. It's not for you just to squander and then you become a narcissist. That's what happens to people who have a lot of money. So the direction that parents should be giving their children is not how rich I am or how poor I am. It's how we live our life. And how do we live our life is by helping, charity, do the right thing. You're in school, do your homework. You go to college, do the work, meet the right people. What can you do to contribute to society? This guy was reckless because he didn't know what to do in my book.
The book is Shadows of Wealth.
Mhm.
Let's thank Pramila Dugal.
Thank you for being here.